Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a really fundamental issue with large language models. See, on their own, they have a pretty serious knowledge problem. So the big question is, how do we give them a better brain?
So let's just start with a simple question for an AI. If you asked a model this question right now, it would probably just stare back at you blankly. It would have no idea. But why?
It's because if a piece of information wasn't in its original training data, like some major news event that happened after it was trained, it literally doesn't know it exists. To get around this, we use what are called augmented generation techniques.
Okay, so our first technique is the one you've probably heard of, Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG. The best way to think about RAG is like an on-demand librarian for your AI. It doesn't know everything off the top of its head, but it knows exactly where to look for the answer the second you ask.
RAG has this really cool two-phase process. First, there's the offline part. This is where it reads all your documents and creates this special, super smart index in what's called a vector database. You can just think of it like a library's card catalog, but instead of organizing words, it organizes ideas. Then, there's the online phase. This happens when you ask a question. It zips through that index, pulls out only the most relevant passages, and hands just those to the AI to put together an answer for you.
But of course, there's another way to do this, and that brings us to Cache Augmented Generation, or CAG. Now, if RAG is the librarian, CAG is more like an upfront memorizer. That student who crams every single page of the textbook right before the big exam.
And CAG's approach, it's completely different. Instead of fetching information when it's needed, it preloads the entire knowledge base, every single document, every little fact, into the model's context window. That's basically its short-term memory. And it does this all at once, before you even ask your first question.
So after processing this huge amount of information, the model does something really important. It creates what's called a KV cache. Now this is the secret sauce. The KV cache is like the model's super compressed, ready-to-use memory of all those documents. It has basically memorized all the key ideas and how they relate, which makes it instantly ready for whatever you throw at it.
All right, let's get into it. We've got our on-demand librarian, RAG, and our upfront memorizer, CAG. Let's put them head-to-head across 4 key areas and really see where each one shines and where they fall short.
First up, accuracy. With RAG, everything, and I mean everything, depends on its retriever. If the librarian can't find the right book on the shelf, the AI gets bad info, or nothing at all. Now, CAG guarantees the information is somewhere in its memory, but its accuracy comes down to whether the model can find that one tiny needle in a giant haystack of data. This means it can sometimes get confused and kind of misremember things when it's under pressure.
Okay, what about speed or latency? Well, RAG always has that extra step. That little trip to the library for every single query really adds a delay. So in this category, CAG is the hands-down winner. Once it's done its cramming session, answering a question is incredibly fast because the info is already in its memory, just ready to go.
Now let's talk about scale. RAG can handle absolutely massive knowledge bases. We're talking millions of documents here, because it only has to look at a few relevant pieces at a time. CAG, on the other hand, hits a hard wall. It is totally limited by the model's context window, which can usually only hold a few hundred documents, tops.
And finally, how up-to-date is the data? With RAG, adding a new book to the library is super easy. You can add or take away documents whenever you want. But with CAG, if just one little fact changes, that student has to reread every single textbook. You have to toss the entire cache and rebuild it from scratch, which, believe me, takes a lot of time and a lot of computing power.
So, how does all this theory actually play out in the real world? Let's find out. We're going to play a quick game I like to call Choose Your Fighter. For each scenario, you decide, do you need the librarian or the memorizer? You ready?
First up, you're building an IT help desk bot. Its entire world is a single 200-page product manual that almost never changes. Who's your fighter?
Yeah, the clear winner here is CAG, the memorizer. Its speed and its simplicity are just a perfect match for a job like this.
It just makes sense, right? The manual is small enough to fit inside the model's memory, the information is static so you don't need to constantly update it, and that lower latency means users get their answers way faster. It's a perfect fit.
All right, scenario number 2. Now you're building a research assistant for a law firm. This thing needs to search through thousands of legal cases that are constantly being updated, and the lawyers need exact citations for every single answer. RAG or CAG?
For this massive, always-changing challenge, you are absolutely going to want RAG in your corner. No question about it.
I mean, the knowledge base is just huge, and it's always changing, something CAG just can't handle. Plus, RAG's whole process naturally gives you the source documents, which is perfect for legal citations, and you can update it instantly as new court rulings come in. Okay, last one. You're building a support tool for doctors. It's got to access patient records, treatment guidelines, and drug interactions. And doctors are going to be asking really complex multi-step questions. What's the call here?
This one is a bit of a trick question, because the best solution isn't one or the other, it's both. A hybrid approach is incredibly powerful. You could use RAG, our librarian, to search that massive medical database and pull out the specific patient records and treatment guides. Then you use CAG to load just that curated set of documents into a temporary working memory, so the doctor can analyze it and ask all those detailed follow-up questions. That hybrid model is a perfect example of how powerful these tools can be when you get them to work together. So let's bring this all home with a final decision framework you can use.
So here's the takeaway, all boiled down. You're going to use RAG for those large dynamic knowledge bases where getting citations is crucial. You'll go with CAG for smaller static data where speed is the absolute #1 priority. And when you need both a broad search and deep analysis, you combine them for a super powerful hybrid solution.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought. As AI models keep getting bigger and bigger context windows, basically bigger memories, will our on-demand librarian, RAG, eventually become obsolete? Or will there always be a need to intelligently search for knowledge, instead of just trying to remember everything? The battle between the librarian and the memorizer, it's really just getting started.